Welcome back to Lampdog. I'm your host, Michael Kelly. In part 2 of our conversation with the legendary Jeff Murrell, we'll delve into his experiences on cinematic milestones like Megalopolis, and we shine a light on the technological evolutions transforming film lighting. Let's jump back in. What would you say, like if you had to choose your favorite child, which is your movies, which ones stand out to you as the ones that you look back on? And it'll be a 2-part question, because we talked about this earlier. What is the one that was the most enjoyable to make? Not necessarily the best film, but what are the films that when you look at your IMDb page really stand out and shine?
Well, I would probably go through my career and pick a few along the way. Like one of the first ones I would have to pull out would be True Lies with Russell Carpenter. I mean, Russell's an amazingly talented man, and for him to give me an opportunity on a movie that big, I'm very, very appreciative, and also remember very fondly about some amazingly great experiences on the movie, because we were all over, the U.S. on that movie, and working for a director like Jim Cameron, one of the most, incredibly talented visionaries that you could work with, created its own challenges too. But I just remember that being all the way through a great experience, early on in my career. And then probably one of the ones I'm most proud of as far as look goes would be Get Shorty. Don Peterman was just a talent that stood alone. And again, being very early on in my career, a person like that who is extremely established, Academy Award nominations, that kind of thing, to take a chance on me and allow me to work on a movie like that with him that I think turned out really great, was another, great experience. Sometimes you look back and I go, how did I get through that movie with the little experience that I had at the time? And it's guys like Russell Carpenter and Don Peterman that allow you, they see the ability to get the job done because they see something in you that they're going to get through it with you, and they're going to help you. Yeah. And so those two, and then I think I did a movie quite a while back called Captain Ron in Puerto Rico, and just the environment of being in Puerto Rico and on an island and shooting a movie like that, which is a fun movie about a sailboat and that kind of thing. Just great memories, great remembering great stories about just experiencing the island and being a part of that environment. Right. Was great. More recently, I was very fortunate to work on a Francis Ford Coppola movie called Megalopolis. Now, the movie itself, critically, is not doing well. It's a very, very, very complex script. Either you're going to love it or you're not going to enjoy it, just because it is so, the characters and the story is so complex. I think it would have been better as like a 4-part series, because it just needed more time with the characters and that kind of thing. But to actually work on it and be a part of a process from a guy like Francis Ford Coppola, who we all know, The Godfather and, Apocalypse Now, was absolutely amazing. I mean, just to be on set with him and watch his process on how he works with actors, some of the theater tricks he uses to get his actors to get performances out of him, and then to collaborate with Mihai was just an amazingly great experience. All the way through, I can't remember a day where I'm like, God, I don't want to be here. It was just epically wonderful to be a part of that, and just to tell the stories. So first time in my career, I actually kept a journal as to all the stuff that went on daily on that movie, just because of who he was and how he commanded, the respect from everybody, whether it's, an actor like Jon Voight or Dustin Hoffman, who are in their own right, or, legendary actors, just commanding that respect. He was an amazing person to work with. I have to say, I have been fortunate enough to work in the Marvel universe, and all of those movies I worked on with Trent were really great experiences. There were challenges, obviously, because of the size of the movie and the amount of preparation, the amount of sets that we had to have ready, 5-6 stages at a time, whereas locations was also something. That was just a difficult challenge, but fun and exciting and enjoyable because of, Trent's knowledge and ability to collaborate with him. He made it I don't want to say easy, but he made it a doable challenge. It was something we could always come up with a solution or a way to make it work. But with a movie of that size, there were a lot of unknowns that were thrown at us that we had to react to, and the fact that we did both the movies back to back. So there were two movies there, Infinity War and Endgame, that we shot in one series, in one section of time, which was about 3 years. So imagine, you say, I'm going to do a movie. It's like, well, okay, 10 to 12 weeks. No, 3 years. And if the team that we put together wasn't as good at working together as we all were, can you imagine being on a set for 3 years and not enjoying the people you're working with? Oof. It would have been impossible. But, the irony or the interesting thing about that particular movie was that when it was all finished after 3 years, if they had said, we're going to do 5 and 6 right away, I think 90% of that crew would have been, let's do it.
Right. Could I have 2 weeks off? And then
give me a couple weeks off, and then we'll go right back at it.
Yeah, that's good. Essentially, every film that you complete is a journey, and there's ups and downs and bumps and bruises along the way. And when you're done, you have, this thing that you've put your heart and soul into, big or small, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Some of them are more challenging. Sometimes it's location, sometimes it's weather, sometimes it's a tough director or a tough DP. Mm-hmm. But essentially what I find, and I could be wrong, is that for the most part, people come together.
Yeah.
And even if it's not around the gaffer, which sometimes has happened to me, that I didn't bond with the crew the way I would wanted, the way I would have wanted to, they all come together on their own. And that's good to see that people are still wanting that unity.
Fond memories again. I also just recently, within the last couple of years, got to work on a couple movies with Don Burgess, who's just a very, very talented man and an absolute pleasure to work with. I really enjoyed working with Don. I hope I get the opportunity again at some point in the future, because that recently in my career, he's been someone I really love to collaborate with and learned a lot about, because Don's been doing it for a couple of years. And, it's just when you think you've learned all the tricks, you learn something more. And one specific situation came up with Don is we were in Atlanta doing, what's it called? A Family Affair, which was something that came out not too long ago. And we were running, time-wise, we were a little bit behind in this and that. And so Don said to the director, we can do this coverage and this coverage at the same time. We ended up having 4 cameras on the coverage. And I'm like, Don, why are we doing it? Why are we doing this coverage together? Why aren't we splitting it up so we make everything look great? He goes, Jeff, stay with me. Trust me.
Right.
We can do this. I'm like, okay, all right. I'm on board. Let's all 4 cameras, put them in. And I got a picture of it because they're all jammed in there. And we worked on it a little bit, and he helped me out with a few tricks that he had learned over the years, and said, let's try this. And I'm like, okay. We did it. And he was right. It came out, the shots all looked good. And he kind of even said to me, he goes, see, you just stick, you got to trust me, which I do, of course.
Of course.
It's just, you learn something. You go, you know what? Don't be afraid to try something. He tells me it's going to work. I got to believe him. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he did. He kind of said, "Yeah, we can make this work." That's kind of another one of those. You're later in your career, and you get to learn something new, and it was really fun to discover that and to have that experience with him. Another great cinematographer that I've had the absolute pleasure to have had the opportunity to work with. A quick funny story about Don is before I did the movies with him. I did a couple commercials with him, and we hadn't known each other all that well and everything. We were doing, I forget what the commercial was, but the director was a younger guy, and he was all interested in, Don and his career, of course, and what he's done with all of his great movies. Yeah. And he's like, well, how do you know the key grip? And I think it was, I can't remember who it was, a really well-known key, Ray Garcia.
Right.
And he said, I met Ray, and he'd done a bunch of movies together, and he came to me. He said, how about Jeff? He goes, we just recently started working together on commercials and that sort of thing. And I said, well, Don, technically that's not quite true. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, well, the first thing I ever worked on Don with was in the mid 80s. He was a cinematographer on this show called Night Trap. And it was an experimental thing where I think it was Nintendo or one of the game companies they make a movie, full-on movie, but you could choose the way the movie went by different endings and different middles and that kind of thing. And I was hired, I was in my early 20s. And so I was still learning the film industry altogether. And I got hired on the movie as a prop assistant. I wasn't even in lighting at the time. I was still kind of, figuring out it was mostly lighting that I had been working in, non-union, but I worked for a production company that also would send you out as a PA and work with different departments. And I worked on this one thing as a prop assistant assigned. And then the prop master got this movie and said, I'd like you to come with me on this project that I'm going to work on. And it was Night Trap. And Don was the cinematographer. So I had to remind him. I said, well, we have worked together. And he goes, so wait a minute. My gaffer was a prop assistant back in the day when we were working. So, just those funny memories of things that throughout your career that come back. We were on the set of A Family Affair, and it was a closed set rehearsal with Don, the director, and I think the actor. And it was a complicated setup where the set was, and I knew it was. I was kind of like sneaking a peek while they were doing the private rehearsal. Just wanted to get ahead a little bit to make sure that, so I was kind of lingering a little closer to watching what was going on in a closed set thing. And they cut rehearsal, bring the crew, and Don says, come here. He goes, you know what a closed set means? I go, Don, he goes, closed set. Like, yes, sir, I understand. But it was just my wanting to please him and wanting to have the information as quick as I could get it so I could help.
What I've discovered over the last few years is that non-consecutive prep has been a godsend for me, where I go in early. I look at the sets, I look at the drawings with the production designer and the art director, and hopefully with the DP and the director, weeks before my prep starts. And then I take some time off, and then I come back. That early time has proven so valuable. I think it saves the production money in the long run because you're able to put out fires and find solutions to things earlier. Is that something that you're seeing more of? Are you fighting for that sort of early prep time?
The non-consecutive prep hasn't been something that I've done too much of, but what I have learned over the years and experience-wise is that I will fight harder for prep, period. And, and due to the fact that, earlier on in my career when, you're really fighting to get the job and you want to please everybody and, they tell you, well, you got 3 weeks prep and you're like, okay, I'll make it work. I've learned the mistakes that can create by not having enough time to prep and camera test and try a few ideas out here and there that eventually are going to save you mountains of problems, when you start filming. So I've learned to maybe fight more for prep, period.
Right.
To say, look, I know that you don't have it in the budget for me to be here 6 weeks ahead of time, but here's why I'm going to pitch I come in earlier than later. And also bring the programmer along to say, well, do you want printouts of the sets ahead of time so Grip Electric can plan out what truss needed and what data is needed, this and that? Well, I need my programmer here to print all that in and spit it out so you can have it a hard copy and go, this is why we're here early. Or earlier than you expected, but in the long run, the 2 weeks you're going to spend extra on me are going to pay themselves tenfold when we get to filming. And so presenting that in a very respectful but professional way is something I fight really hard for.
Okay.
The one I'm going to do more recently, going to the Philippines, I'm doing the same thing. It's like I think going to the Philippines in itself is going to create its own challenges. So I need a little bit more time to make sure that I can get the proper local help if it's there, suss out the rental situations and where the equipment is. If I'm coming on too late and I'm realizing, hey, we got to ship in some equipment from New Zealand, had I known that 2 weeks prior, it's going to save you almost the amount of money that you're spending on my extra prep to ship that stuff, quicker than taking a little more time to figure out what it's needed. Yeah. So I think the non-consecutive I haven't gotten into too much, but I do and have been pushing harder for longer prep times then eventually save us time, especially with our technology nowadays that we have available to us. Let us use it. Let us show you why the programmer is invaluable to the prep of what we're trying to accomplish. When I go to Scotty and I go, let's start designing this, and he gets some, the thing is make them 6 feet apart. Now, okay, it's too many. Make them 7 feet apart. How's that feel? How's that look? And he's doing it as we speak.
Yeah.
Print it out. Here you go. This is what we need. Pull the right proper equipment. We're not guessing on it. This is what's going to work.
Built in the space in 3 dimensions,
Exactly right.
And here's the preview of it.
Yeah. I'm sure you're well aware that, Len Levine is coming up and has been developing an amazing pre-pro presentation to all of that, technology and how to order equipment properly and the whole. I haven't even gotten into exactly how elaborate his system is, but from what he's talked to me about it's pretty amazing.
I think it's going to be released in stages. It's pretty elaborate.
It's going to be game changing.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of him for what he's done because it's, he's really spent a lot of time and effort into developing this, and he's close to, getting it out there.
Yeah.
So I asked him for a little beta test.
Yeah, me too. I haven't got mine yet.
I haven't got mine either.
Len. Let's talk about specific crew positions. Obviously, the 3 big ones are your programmer, your best boy, and your rigging gaffer.
Mm-hmm.
You've had pretty good luck with hiring all 3 of those positions in your career.
Yes, I have.
Has that changed? Have you looked in different directions now? Are young programmers more attractive to you than people that you've known for a long time because of the energy? It's a give and take.
Not really. Because being as passionate as I feel I am about still wanting to be on set after 30 plus years, programmers you can find like Scotty. Scotty is still on top of his game, still excited about a project, still offers everything to the project and is always well worth, getting him on board when you can. And Scotty's not the only one, of course.
Yeah.
I do have a programmer that I've used in the last 4 films, Mark Stoon, who's, just as smart as you can be, really creative. See, that's the thing about the programs I feel is like, you want to feel like as a gaffer, you're creatively coming up with these wonderful ideas, but you really can't execute them without the proper keystrokes. And that's, that also is a talent when they try to take what I'm trying to explain to them, what I want them to do on the board, which sounds like a foreign language, and they compute it to going, I know what he means. He's not quite saying it technically how I would say it, but I get what he wants. How about this?
Right.
You go, no, speed it up a little bit, or change a little color, or this and that. They know what a little means, or they know what I mean by a beat later.
Sure.
And they learn that language. Each gaffer has a different language. Some are much more proficient in the actual dimmer board themselves. Me, I hire them because they're really good at it. Gives me more time to spend doing what I like to do, which is being creative, on the look side of it. I trust that Scotty and Mark, John Crimmins is another just off the charts helpful. John's more of the commercial world guy, but man, he's just never once disappointed. He's just so smart and so calm and helpful. I did a commercial with Robert Elswit, who's another legend and just an amazing talent. And I had the opportunity, because Ian was out in New York doing a movie, to work with Robert on a few commercials. And again, it's that first time knowing who Robert is and getting a feel for how he likes to do things. And this particular commercial was very involved from a lighting standpoint. It got bigger and bigger and bigger as I discovered what Robert does and what Robert likes. And I got to the point where we were under the gun. It was like, we've got 5 sets at this stage. They're all having to be one to the next, to the next, to the next. And I'm stealing equipment from one to make another one work. And it got really, really just a little bit confusing. And John, if it was anybody else, he would have been like, what are you talking about? But he knew. He stuck with me. And he's like, I know what he's talking about. I know he's better communicating in this. I'm going to give him a break for right now. And he just stuck with me. And it's that importance of the programmer it's understated at best. We can, if for some reason I'm going to work and I have a car accident and I don't make it to work, they're going to shoot.
Right.
John doesn't make it to work. We're figuring out what the hell we're going to do to get through the day because he can't turn anything on.
Yeah, who knows how to turn this board on?
And who knows how to do all the presets that we worked with all day yesterday.
Yeah.
So, I understand the value and the importance of that. That's why, even in the commercial world, when the production manager says, your programmer's making more than you do, but you hired him. It's like, yeah, I know. Yeah. Are you okay with that? Of course I am. Because, they deserve the payoff that they're getting because that is how important they are to our process.
Yeah. And that relationship has changed a lot too, because now there's a connection between, it's almost a triangular relationship with the DP and the program and the gaffer.
Absolutely.
And you see someone like Adam Chambers,
yeah,
and Noah,
yeah,
and Hoyta. Mm-hmm. That triangle is very fluid. And I saw it with Rafi and Brian Booth and Andrew Palermo in the last movie they did. Mm-hmm. It's a very loose triangle so that the communication system works very well once it's worked out, but it doesn't always go through the gaffer.
I have experienced that, and I will say, maybe it's my control issues, which is a whole other discussion about, growing up in my childhood, my mother that you were going to ask about, right?
I haven't gotten there yet. I'm saving that one.
Due to my control issues, I don't fit as well into a system when it's the programmer and the DP communicating, and I'm the third triangle, yes.
Right.
But I feel a little bit sometimes out of the loop when there's there's adjustment made, and it's done between the programmer and the DP, and maybe I'm off doing something, whatever. I come back and go, oh, what changed? Why is that? What happened?
Right.
Well, I understand it, and I know that there's DPs that work that way, and I will, of course, embrace that. It's just not my favorite style of working when there's three people kind of doing a two-person job.
Yeah.
I've worked with DPs that we've got a great programmer, the talent of Scotty Barnes or John Crimmins or, Mark Stewin, my guy. And yet the DP wants his own little controller of like the key light, this and that. I get it, but it's not my favorite process. And I'm not saying there's not a way to make that work.
Right.
It's just I find it when I'm communicating with the board operator, instead of the DP, giving him what he wants and not keeping him out of the loop, but just making it all happen for him without that third part of it.
Yeah.
It's just something that it's just how my work process is better flowing when it's two instead of three.
Yeah.
But,
I've seen that, the Bolero system helps that a ton.
Love that.
Where everybody's communicating in the same room.
Yes.
So that helps.
The HMEs, the Boleros. And that's true. And that has really helped that process. And I have learned to adjust and appreciate that because then you're hearing all the stuff that's going on. And that is a really good way to combat against that. But it still doesn't change, when they're, yeah, I get it. Yeah.
But there's a fourth element that gets added into this as well, is now you have a DIT who's very involved and invested in the image. Mm-hmm. Now talking in with this mix, and oftentimes I've had conversations with DITs like, I would prefer if you didn't start making recommendations on lighting without going through, like, I understand you're very smart and you have a vested interest in this image.
Sure.
And maybe that does need to be adjusted.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe don't go directly to the DP for it.
Yeah, I get that. I'd rather have them come to me and say, do you think that needs, are you okay with?
Yeah.
And you discuss it and you go, well, so you might even be to the point where your DP said he likes it. He wanted that dark. He doesn't want that little extra or something. You go, oh, okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
But yes, there is that fourth element, and it is something you do have to embrace because I can tell you, there's a lot of times with a DIT, because you're so busy doing something, might put, hey, Jeff, did you? Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate you looking out for me. But he goes to me, not the DP, going, did he miss that?
Right.
No, let me know. And you're right. And it's a valuable help rather than a fourth wheel. It's more of another set of eyes qualified to say, I see something. Do you want to?
Yeah. Whose only job is to stare at that screen all day and pay attention to every detail.
Yeah. Because one thing I'm learning to adjust is how much time you spend in the DIT tent. I love to still be out on the set, visually seeing things in real time, as opposed to, and of course, going back to the image and looking at it and seeing what you're getting,
Right.
valuable without a doubt. But get out of that tent and get on the set and see what, why your restrictions are what they are.
Yeah.
When you're saying, move the light over, well, it's against the wall. It's like, okay, didn't see that.
Right. If you've started your career in film, with shooting film, you're
Yeah.
standing on a set lighting it. That's the only way to do it. Like
Right.
you're using your eye and your meter, and that's it. Those are the two tools you have at your disposal. And it gets harder with digital because your eye doesn't always tell you the truth, and so you're sort of forced to be in the tent.
Absolutely. That's why it's always an exciting, fun challenge to go, oh, we're doing film? Oh, good.
Yeah.
Because it just makes you bring back the tools in the toolbox you hadn't used in a while,
Right.
i.e. being a meter.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I get to, shine it all up. And, it's great.
Put a fresh battery in it.
Get that backlight off of that, just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still wear mine. I don't pull it out very often, but I wear it.
It's always there because if there's ever a, we can talk for another whole session about XY.
Yeah.
And it's an invaluable tool. It is, but I also over experience love trusting my eye to color too. Going, I'm not going to spend 10 minutes getting the XY perfect unless it absolutely has to be.
Right.
I was like, just add a point of magenta. Okay, the point of yellow, point of red, secondary colors, whatever it is we're using, and go, yeah, that's it. I got it. Instead of, they're both valuable. I do use XY when it's necessary and when needed, but I also love mixing color on my own and trusting my eye.
There's a certain point where you can overcomplicate every setup. And if you're trying to nail
Absolutely
every
right.
color to be exactly identical.
Well, then you're taking the focus off of, okay, I got all the XY right. Ooh,
Right.
that's way too much fill. Or what was I thinking?
Yeah.
Or, I missed. I wished I had done that. But you're too busy caught up in the technology a little bit. But, yeah.
And that's what I've run into, and we were discussing a little bit earlier, was, how much of that color science is really ending up on the final product.
Absolutely.
I've had a lot of conversations with really smart people about, but isn't the end goal to be a visual that works for these two things?
Absolutely.
I understand trying to make it easy for them in post and trying to make the DI work, and so there's complications there. But I think sometimes we get a little too far in the weeds on the technology.
We do. And a good example of that is, when you talk to a vendor about a new product and their big pitch is, this is twice as bright. This is, so bright you can't believe it. It's like, that's great. But what is it like when it's at 2%? Because chances are I'm not going to be at 100 unless it's one of those situations where you really need the punch out of it. But a lot of times these products that are coming out are more apt to be used. Sometimes, I'm sure you've been in a situation where I'm going, okay, 1%. How about a 0.5%? You get to the point where, I put ND on lights so I could get in a range where they're not crapping out on me.
Or the blue indicator on the back of the light that tells you got a DMX signal that's too bright and you're putting tape over it. Yeah. That's blown a wall out because it's putting a blue cancer shooter at 3200 ASA.
It's so true. The tools that we have are great. And we've talked earlier about, punchier LEDs and what they're capable of and what they can do, which again is great. But I also feel that it's equally, if not more important, that those things work at low percentages too. So you're not missing a color just because you're down to the low levels of the light itself.
Or it just shifts.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, ooh, what happened to the color?
Yeah.
Well, you're at 1%. Oh, okay. That would do it.
But I want to be at 1%.
Yeah, right. I don't want to be any brighter.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That seems to be sort of the struggle now, is that, like you talked about, the rate of advancement in technology is so extreme that staying on top of it is almost a full-time job.
It really is. It really is. It requires a lot of extra off-the-job, investigation and work, and being on the Discord or on the ICLS and listening to what people are saying about feedback and just making mental notes of it. But absolutely.
The Titan tubes that we have here have been, you use them all the time, every day.
Yeah. That's one of the interesting things. If I had to make a retrospect about career change, what's changed over my career is that if I went back and was able to pull up the first unit lighting truck package on Men in Black to what I just did on Megalopolis, the units themselves, there's probably not one light that I used on Men in Black that would even be considered being a part of the package on the most recent film.
Yeah.
It's just, you had your full tungsten package, your Love Kino Flow, your full Kino Flow package,
Right.
fluorescent. And, now, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, depending on what the job is, it's either, the Philips Q10s, Q8s, for Fresnels.
Right.
The Titan tubes, Astera, all the Astera products, of course. It's just completely different. The Vortexes, the Sky Panels, the 360s. And none of that obviously was around when we were doing that. We still got the job done and the movie still looked great.
Yeah.
But man, oh man, what a different set of tools, which is a good example or a good driving home the point. Stay out of your comfort zone and stay up on the technology. Because the minute you decide that it's not important anymore, the relevance becomes like, what are they talking about when these?
Yeah. I don't even know how to turn an S60 on. Yeah. I've made that mistake at least twice in my life, and one of them was with Light Gear. When they started talking about LED ribbon, I was like, yeah, it's cool. Like, I like it, but I can't see it being a thing.
Yeah.
Al and I were sitting on a set one day, and we were talking about this and that with LEDs, and I had been experimenting with them, and Al's like, yeah, we're going to make this company. We're going to make this specific ribbon for the film industry. I'm like, oh, that's cute. I'll buy some. And the other one was when, Craig Brink showed me the first PDB.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like,
Pack.
I don't know how that's going to be useful to me.
Yeah.
And from that moment on, I said, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to be open to this technology. Even if I don't use it, I want to know it's there because it'll be back in the back of my brain.
Yeah. I mean, the Light Gear is a really good example because before the light mats existed to whatever, it's progressed now to, it's full spectrum, that kind of thing. It started out just hybrid, and it was actually not even hybrid. It was cool white, warm white.
Yeah.
To where we are now with it. But I remember before that ever even existed, I remember going to Al and saying, I got to build this shallow box with diffusion and, but I got to feed it with a battery and any recommendation, what can you do for me? And he built what we would now call a light mat 2.
Right.
We called them pizza boxes because they look like a pizza box, right? And I used them for a long, long time. And I had my fixtures department build them before there were light mats because it's such a usable tool. And then hence, now you look at light mats, they're all different sizes and shapes. And, it's an extremely usable tool that you probably couldn't walk on any movie set and look at a gaffer's truck and go, where are the light mats? They're definitely there.
They're there, yeah.
Yeah.
Or some version, yeah.
Right.
For me, and I think for you and a lot of other folks that we know that are far enough into this mess to really appreciate the things that we've accomplished and the people we've met and gotten a chance to work with. What can you pass on to the next generation? What tidbits? And it's hard to wrap a whole career into one tagline, but
right.
What kind of approaches are you trying to pass on to the next generation of gaffers or DPs or key grips or anybody in the industry?
I think as a gaffer, one of the most important qualities you can have to be a successful gaffer over time is to really learn to be kind of a chameleon in a way, in that we touched about it a little bit earlier, in that you got to be able to read the person you're working for and try to give them ultimately what they want, what their vision is, because that's our job, really. Right. It's like, I may have a strong idea and an opinion about how I want to light something, but ultimately, if the DP said, yeah, that's not really what I'm going for, you got to learn how to let things go a little bit if you really want to be successful in making that person happy and get one of the insecurities in this industry, for gaffers is that you get passionate about working for somebody, you work for them, you really don't know how it went until you get the second call. And you're like, oh, okay, I did do a good job. So it's getting that second call, I think, is important in that you do learn what are they looking for and are you providing the right tools to give them what they want, and careful not to say, well, on the last thing, this is what we did. You can share that, but you don't want to make them feel like, well, I don't want to do what you did on the last thing. I want to do what I want to do now. And there's collaboration and there's ways to get to that point, but it's learning to read people and to read the person and the environment that you're in, and try to help in that environment to the best of your abilities by being prepared, being open to other ideas that you may not have heard of or may have been a part of, listening and taking in the information as well as providing it. But it is being a good listener, being prepared, being on top of technology, and treating people with absolute respect. You could be the most talented lighter in the world, but if somebody doesn't really want to work for you because you're not pleasant or you're constantly going, berating because they're not getting your idea and you're not trying to express yourself in a respectful way, you're going to run into trouble. You're going to run into trouble getting hired because people aren't going to want to work for you because you're not giving them the opportunity to grow and learn. And, in my career now versus maybe when I first started, I always felt like I gave the proper respect, but sometimes use the resources that you have. People that you hire can have good ideas without stepping on your toes. Right. You have, as the gaffer, you have the decision to go, thank you, I like your idea, I get it, but this is why I'm not going to do that. Or, hey, you know what? Didn't think of that. Great, let's try that. It gives the person that's working with you, hey, they're going to use my idea. That's great. I feel part of the process. So the more that your team feels like they're contributing and not just you as the gaffer, it goes a long way. So, to help people coming up through the ranks, don't be afraid to take ideas from your crew or other people. Be respectful, be confident. Use the technology that's there for us. Stay on top of it. Because like we've said several times, it's constantly changing. So, the information's there. It's just really treating with people with respect. And that means all departments. You're not very nice to a certain PA as an example. Well, 2 years from now, when that PA is now a production manager, remembers you, how do you think that relationship's going to go? So show respect. In fact, try to teach and help people learn and understand the process so that they feel like, hey, that guy's, I can approach him whenever I have a problem, I can go to this person. I feel comfortable that he's open to my concerns and have that open communication. I mean, it's all about reading people and being respectful to people and having them enjoy their jobs along with how much you enjoy yours, and how much can you really enjoy your job if everybody around you is not that happy. Right. I just don't see how that works. So it's just being able to have an open door, listening to, the feedback, whether it's constructive or otherwise, and being able to evaluate if that's helpful to you or not, but being open to it.
Yeah. And being able to adapt. Obviously you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make judgments that you wouldn't make again. Mm-hmm. So it's a constant process. It
really is.
I think what people don't realize about being a gaffer is that not all of it's about lighting. A lot of it's about management. It's about dealing with people and trying to process and repairing relationships that you may have damaged at some point. Like it's a constant process.
I think one of the things that I try to do when I feel that someone on my crew wants to take that next step to being the gaffer, and I've had crew members say, any advice you can give me or any help you can be, and this is my career where I want to go with it. It's like taking the time, and this is what Don always did for me, Don Peterman. If like somebody ever walked up to him and said, hey, that was really cool, what'd you do? He's not going to go, who are you and why are you talking to me? It's like he would take the time to go, this is kind of why I did that. And I try to take that and do the same thing where if someone comes up with one of the crew members, it doesn't understand exactly the conversation I may have just had with the DP or the time frame that I'm under, going, shit, I got to get this done in 10 minutes. And he says, hey, we've got those things on the truck. I can't do that right now. It's like, but going back and explaining to that person, that was a good idea. Here's why I didn't use it. Because I was under the gun. I had to get something done in 10 minutes. I knew that would take longer. What's going to show up on the screen that's going to matter? I passed on that. And this is why, instead of going, no, don't, that's not a good idea. Because they're not going to come to you if they see something in the future or feel comfortable, and you're not helping them develop. There's room in this industry for everybody to be successful. So why not try to develop younger gaffers or younger people who want to have the same opportunity that I did and grow in the industry? I mean, it's good for everybody. It's good for business.
And the other thing is spending time on set. If you want to be a gaffer, learn to be the pocket guy.
Here's the one thing that just drives us all absolutely out of our minds is that silly little device that we all have. If you want to learn about what's going on a movie set, put the phone away, put it in a thing, check it at lunch, whatever. But if you really want to grow as a department head, whatever that may be, gaffer, key grip, whatever it is, don't be a slave to that phone. It's not necessary. You don't need it. All that social media and interactive stuff. Pay attention.
Right.
Pay attention to why that light is there and why that's there and why that has a crate on it, why that doesn't, and why that's a hard light and why that isn't. Learn these things so you can use your tools properly, but want to learn. And part of it is not being a slave to the phone. And we are all guilty of it.
Sure.
And myself included from time to time, because we all think what we got going on in our lives is more important than anybody else's. It's not. Feel how liberating it is if you actually put your phone away and don't see it till lunch. You'll be amazed how much enjoyment you have out of your day by not doing that.
And how little actually happens on the phone while you're not there.
Especially for a younger gaffer, a lot of DPs cannot stand their gaffer or their department heads being on the phone, because that means they're not paying attention. They're not watching what's going on. They're more interested in, whatever it is that's on the phone.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. I mean, it really is. We could go on about that, but it's almost like when I tell my kids, you tell them once, you let it go, because otherwise they don't hear it anymore. Yeah. But the phone is a big thing that you should learn to stay away from. I've never done one. I've always wanted to, is a Tarantino movie, because he doesn't allow phones on set.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't care if you're the producer, the actor, he doesn't allow, because he realizes the distraction that phone is. And I agree with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a necessary tool. We're for the best boy. The best boy's got to be on the phone all day, every day.
Of course.
But they're not on set.
And if you got to make a phone, go off set and do it. Don't be seen by everybody on the phone. That sounds like more like a parent trying to teach his kid, whatever. But as a gaffer and as a department head, you want the confidence of your boss knowing that you're paying attention, that you're really interested in what's going on. And we've all worked with DPs that'll sit there and do that too. But hey, they're the boss. They can do what they want.
And they've only got an answer to their boss.
Exactly right.
But I think that those are good opportunities to allow somebody to jump in. I got to jump out and make a phone call. Can you cover set? Like that aspiring gaffer now has the time with the DP, probably not doing a major lighting setup.
Yep.
You're making the small adjustments on the, on the
I do
set.
that intentionally.
Yeah.
I'll see a situation where it's now maintenance at this point. Put somebody in the hot seat a little bit. Let them feel it like, oh, okay, this is fun. Yeah. My oldest son has been experiencing that a little bit. And he comes home so excited a couple times, and not even with me on set. Of course, he never listens to me, right? But to say, hey, I had to cover so-and-so for a couple hours or an hour because he had something else going on. And boy, I tell you, Dad, I really enjoyed that. And it's like, you got to pay attention, and there's a little pressure on you, and the DP's going, did you do that? It's like, yeah, I did, sir, and it's exciting. When as a young person growing up in the industry, to become a department head, the way to really experience it and learn is get in the saddle, get in with somebody who's going to let you take the reins every now and then just to experience it, because it's a totally different ballgame when you're the one going, well, I guess that's me. I got to make this decision.
And probably all of us who do this at any level are a bit of pressure junkies. Like, you perform best when you're under pressure to get stuff done. Yeah. Like, that's when you're at your finest. You're the most productive. When things are clicking and you're moving and you're talking to people and you've got that rhythm of things moving along, that's when it's most enjoyable for me. When you feel like that flow is going and you get it. You feel that surge of energy. And
it's like the third quarter in a football game. You're finally warmed up and getting going, and things are starting to go.
Hopefully not like the last 2 minutes of a college basketball game.
Right.
What are we missing? What are we not talking about that you think is important to you or to other people?
Well, I don't know. I mean, throughout my career, I've never shied away from any project. I don't care how big or small it is, because you'd never really realize what it's going to lead to. I think a good example for me is I always want to try to get back to the industry wherever I can. Somebody asked me to do a podcast to share my experiences. I always say yes if I'm available, because I think it's important to pass this information along to future people that want to do what we do and see if they enjoy it like we do. And as far as projects go, like I remember I did a PSA for Curtis Clark. You know that name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I never worked with him. Was called to do a PSA. Nobody else wanted to do it because there's no money.
Right.
I'm like, well, no, Curtis Clark. I mean, of course I'd like to work with him. So I went in, worked with him, and for the next 2 years, he kept me busy on commercials. And we went to New Zealand on a commercial. We went all over the world, and he took me with him because I met him on a PSA. So never feel like the project's below you or not good enough for you. It always leads or could lead to something that's life-changing in your career.
Yeah.
It's and that goes with like being on set and paying attention. Somebody's going to notice that you're not the guy in the background flipping through your phone. He's noticing that guy's always paying attention.
Right.
I'm going to give him a shot. And that's kind of how I got my very, very first shot on a movie set, calling any kind of decisions, was on Speechless. Everything happens for a reason, but this particular situation, I still think back and I go, there's more to it in the universe than what this situation was. But I was the rigging gaffer on the job, and I had been setting up for a magic hour shot outside a hotel room. Never worked with Don. It was kind of called in under different circumstances as the rigging gaffer, and magic hour was approaching. And here comes Don Peterman and the director, Ron Underwood, and the producers and some other people. And I see Don, he's kind of animated off in the distance. I'm going, oh shit, is he not happy with something I did? But I couldn't find the gaffer anywhere. He didn't come out during the magic hour. I didn't know where he was. And so I was like, well, I'll just go up to Don and say, Mr. Peterman, is everything all right? Looks like, he goes, hey, come here. He goes, can you get your guys, I want to put a light on the railroad track to, glimmer it up a little bit for magic hour. And can you do this and do this? And I'm like, yeah, I can. I was still looking, where's the gaffer, right? He never came out. So I did the thing, and Don came up to me afterwards and said, thank you so much. I never would have got that shot without your guys' help. And I said, well, it's what we're here for. Never, all the while, never going, why didn't the gaffer come out? He didn't. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not a criticism on him, other than my career changed that day, because then he asked me to do the reshoots, asked me to do Get Shorty, asked me to do Men in Black and The Grinch and all these other movies, all because I helped him out in that one situation. He said, I want this kid on my team.
Right.
So, the advice there is, don't take any situation lightly. It could change your life. That one situation where you were paying attention, there to help, it could completely change your career.
Jeff Murrell, it's always a pleasure to see you, but thank you so much for coming here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I hope this went well. It's fun to talk about something you're very passionate about.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And that's a wrap on our enlightening discussion with Jeff Murrell. Thanks for tuning in to Lamp Talk. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe for more stories behind the lights.